The bag was not the point. The bag was just the excuse the universe used. Her name was Cleo Reyes. She was 32, did freelance grant writing for nonprofits that always seemed to need her work yesterday, and kept a battered leather bag she'd had since grad school, patched twice, refusing every offer anyone made to replace it. She had a habit of underselling how much something mattered, right up until it actually mattered too much to keep hiding. We'd been best friends for 10 years, since a shared internship at a nonprofit where we'd bonded over mutual contempt for a supervisor who made everyone refer to spreadsheets as deliverables and held meetings that ran exactly twice as long as their stated purpose required. We'd survived that internship by passing increasingly absurd notes back and forth during meetings, a habit that somehow never fully died even after we both moved on to better jobs, replaced eventually by an equally absurd, decade-long group chat. 10 years had taken us through multiple cities, several jobs each, more than a few partners on both sides who'd come and gone, while the friendship itself never once wavered. The kind of relationship that had quietly become the most stable thing in either of our lives, without either of us formally noticing when that happened. She'd left the bag at my apartment after a weekend visit, the kind of low-key trip where she crashed on my couch for 2 nights, and we mostly just cooked bad food and watched shows neither of us fully paid attention to. She'd driven home Sunday evening, 3 hours each way, and texted me Monday morning in a tone that was trying very hard to sound casual and was not succeeding. "Hey, weird question. Did I leave my bag at your place? Let me check. I found it sitting by my door exactly where she'd set it down Friday night. Yeah, it's here. Want me to ship it? Could you? I know it's a big ask, but I really need it back soon, like sooner than shipping would manage. Everything okay? Yeah, mostly. It's just got some stuff in it I need for tomorrow. A grant deadline thing. It's fine. I'll figure something out. Don't worry about it." The "don't worry about it" landed exactly the way it always does when someone says it specifically because they want you to worry about it, and I sat with that text for about 30 seconds before deciding shipping wasn't actually the move here. I have poor survival instincts around messages that try this hard to sound unbothered. I should probably get that looked at. I texted back, "I'm driving it down. Give me a few hours." "Gideon, you don't have to do that. It's 3 hours each way. That's insane. I'm already getting my keys." This conversation is happening in the past tense now. She didn't argue further, which told me more than the original text had. Since Cleo arguing against an offer of help was usually a several-round negotiation, and her not bothering meant she needed it more than she'd let herself say outright. The drive down gave me too much time to think, mostly about the specific tone of her text, the kind of carefully controlled casualness that only shows up when someone's holding something together by a thread they don't want anyone to see. I'd known her for 10 years. I knew her fine voice from her actual fine voice, and this had not been the actual fine voice. I pulled up outside her apartment a little after 6, the drive having eaten most of the afternoon, and before I'd even gotten the bag out of the back seat, her front door opened, and she was standing there, and I realized immediately that whatever had actually been happening was bigger than a misplaced grant deadline. She was crying, the kind of crying that's mostly relief with something heavier underneath it, and she crossed the small distance between the door and my car faster than the situation strictly required, wrapping her arms around me before I'd even fully processed what I was looking at. "You didn't have to do this," she said, voice thick, muffled against my shoulder. "You drove 3 hours. For a bag. I drove 3 hours because you sounded like you were drowning and trying very hard to pretend you weren't. The bag was just the part I could actually solve." She pulled back enough to look at me, eyes red, something in her face cracking open in a way I rarely got to see, since Cleo's careful composure was usually airtight, even under real pressure. "The grant deadline thing is real," she said, But it's not actually the reason I'm like this. My dad's surgery got moved up. It's tomorrow, actually. Not next month like we thought. And I found out an hour after you texted. And I've just been sitting here trying to hold all of it together, with absolutely nobody around to help me hold it. And then you texted that you were already getting your keys. And I think something in me just broke a little. The good kind of breaking. The kind where you finally let someone catch you. I have poor survival instincts around news delivered this honestly, after this much careful effort to hide it. I should probably get that looked at, ideally somewhere that isn't her doorstep, with her actively crying into my jacket. We went inside, and I made tea neither of us actually wanted, just to have something to do with our hands, and she talked through the surgery details, the grant deadline she'd now have to push, the specific exhaustion of holding a crisis alone for an afternoon, because she hadn't wanted to worry anyone with something that might turn out fine. I listened, mostly, occasionally offering the kind of practical help a person can actually use in a moment like that. Looking up hospital visiting hours, drafting an email extension request for the grant. Small, useful things, instead of empty reassurance. "I don't know how to thank you for today," she said, much later, the tea long gone cold, both of us sitting on her couch, in the kind of exhausted quiet that follows an adrenaline crash. The bag thing. The everything thing. I don't think I've ever had someone show up like that, without me even having to actually ask. You didn't have to ask. The texts asked for you. The text tried very hard not to ask anything, which you apparently saw straight through. 10 years gives you that. I know your fine voice. She studied me for a long moment, something shifting in her expression that wasn't quite the exhaustion from before. I think I've been telling myself for years that the reason I call you first, before anyone else, in every crisis and every good thing, is just because we're close. Best friends. The obvious explanation. I don't think it's been just that in a while. And today, watching you actually drive 3 hours without even pausing to think about it, I think I finally let myself admit why. That sentence did something quiet to the living room. Why, I asked, even though some part of me already suspected the shape of the answer. Because I don't just need you the way I'd need any good friend. I need you specifically, in a way that feels bigger than the friendship category we've been using for 10 years. And I think I've known that for longer than today. And today just made it impossible to keep pretending otherwise. Something in my chest didn't tighten so much as drop, all at once, like it had been holding itself up for 10 years, and had finally been given permission to stop. "You don't have to keep talking," I said. "We can finish this cold tea and pretend the last 2 minutes didn't happen, if you want the exit." She looked at me for a second too long. One full second passed, where it would have been safe to look away, and didn't take it. "I don't want the exit." "Okay." My voice came out rougher than I meant it to. "Then I should tell you something, and it's not about the bag." She didn't say anything, just waited, hands wrapped around the cold mug, which from her was its own kind of loud. Every woman I've dated in the last few years felt temporary while I was dating them, like a placeholder for something that hadn't shown up yet. You've never once felt temporary, not even when you're underselling a real crisis with a casual text that fools absolutely no one who actually knows you. The text was a reasonable attempt. It was not a reasonable attempt. That's not the point right now. The point is, I've spent 10 years building a case for why this is just the world's closest friendship. And today, somewhere around hour 2 of that drive, I think I admitted to myself that it had stopped being just that a long time ago. The living room got very quiet. Not heavy quiet, just still, the way air gets right before weather changes. She reached over and took my hand, the bag she'd needed so urgently sitting forgotten by the door where I'd dropped it hours earlier. Fingers closing around mine like she'd already decided this a while ago and had just been waiting for the right crisis to finally bring it out. "For the record," she said, "I called you first today, before anyone. including my own mother, who is also dealing with this surgery news. I told myself it was just logistics, since you're the one with the bag. It wasn't just logistics. It wasn't just logistics. It was extremely not just logistics. That landed harder than the confession had. From the kitchen, the kettle she'd forgotten to fully turn off clicked and hissed faintly. A small domestic interruption neither of us had noticed building, and the spell broke just enough for both of us to laugh, tired and a little wrung out, but genuinely laughing. Even the kettle has opinions about our timing, Cleo said. It's been listening to 10 years of Almost. I think it's relieved too. We should probably actually turn that off before it does something dramatic. 3 months later, her father's surgery had gone well, a fact that anchored most conversations for a while afterward. The relief of it still fresh enough to mention often. The leather bag had a new patch added to its growing collection, this one stitched by Cleo herself, with more enthusiasm than skill. A small, deliberate addition to a bag that had apparently earned a permanent place in both our stories now. We still argue about whether her texting style during a crisis qualifies as helpful understatement or actively misleading. I maintain it's the second one firmly, a year after that, when her father held a small recovery celebration.